So I suppose I was inspired to talk about this because I saw an article by The Guardian yesterday saying that there'd been quite a dramatic increase in people getting in touch with the eating disorder charity Beat. And it's no wonder that in a situation like this, issues like eating disorders are on the increase. I mean, there's also been a massive increase in mental health issues. And I also saw an article yesterday saying that the likelihood of these mental health consequences being here to stay is very high, at least the next 5 years. I'm not entirely sure how they estimated that, but I 100% think it's true. And I always thought of an eating disorder as kind of a coping mechanism for chaos, be that on a global or an individual scale. And a lot of people sort of look at the cultural aspects of eating disorders. They focus on the fact that people are trying to attain a certain body shape. Standards of beauty and stuff are contributing to the development of eating disorders, which they are in a way, but the way I see the role of beauty standards and the role of the media, social media, etc. in eating disorders is that it provides us or people with a goal that is associated with positive feelings and associated with the removal of negative feelings, as in you're doing something to improve yourself, you've got yourself under control. That's what it does. It paints that ideal rather than being the direct cause of these things. And I've always assumed that eating disorders is essentially they're a coping mechanism for something. They're a coping mechanism for something negative that's going on in your life. And the whole idea is that you want to decrease the level of negative feelings you're feeling and increase the level of positive feelings you're feeling, or at least the perceived negative and positive feelings that you're experiencing. This situation is a breeding ground for behaviors like these, for mental illness, because there is so much happening all at once on both an individual and a global scale. It's no longer just what's going on in your life or what's going on in your family's life, it's going on globally. We are constantly fed with not only negative news, but the same news over and over and over again. And it's a very difficult thing for someone who has a tendency to develop things like this. One of the things that I've noticed is that if I'm in a routine, or I've seen this with people as well, if they've got themselves into it, a routine it's not enough to say routine. Sort of a set of compulsive behaviors that they repeat on a daily basis that can very quickly become negative. And we're seeing this with things now. We're seeing this with the same news on the channel all the time, the same things you're seeing on social media, the same, and also that there's nothing really defined. There's not a path that's defined. It's just lots of negativity of all the same thing all the time. And not only have we had our routines changed completely, or the majority of us had our routines changed completely, but we've also had our ability to break that routine changed. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is so important for recovery from eating disorders and for stopping their development, is the ability to break those behaviors before they become compulsive. So first, like I was talking about before, is this role in the change of routine. Now, a lot of people that suffer from eating disorders or suffer from anything along those lines is often why these behaviors occur in the first place, because they are an attempt at adapting to something that we are unable to adapt to. That's essentially what you're doing. You're trying your best, and you're trying with something that's within your control, or what you perceive to be is within your control, to adapt to a change. This is the first time in our lifetimes that we've seen anything like this. So of course that's going to have people reaching out to their old behaviors or trying to develop sometimes new behaviors to cope with that. And like I said before, this ability to break our routines is so important in ensuring that behaviors don't become compulsive. And this is one thing I see with people that have issues with exercising too much, with restriction. It's like, if you go for a walk every morning, or if you go for a run, it's not necessarily an unhealthy behavior, but if that becomes a source of anxiety if it doesn't happen, a severe anxiety if it doesn't happen, not just like, oh, I feel a bit better when I walk, but that essentially is the start of a behavior that's become a compulsive behavior. And a lot of eating disorders are fueled by those. They're fueled by ritual. They're fueled by need to continue certain actions a certain number of times, it really overlaps with obsessive compulsive disorder and addiction. This sort of need to compulsively do things to avoid a negative outcome. Another thing is people don't have the same access they do to services that can help them. And I mean, that's a pretty obvious thing, but even in a normal situation, there's definitely a barrier to getting help for eating disorders, because a lot of people don't believe that they are in a state that they need to. They almost feel like they need to earn that right. And now even more than ever that I will. And one of the biggest barriers are the individuals themselves. I was a huge barrier to my own recovery for a very long time, and I see that in lots of different people. Another thing is we are being bombarded with scare tactics and people with these sort of traits within them, with this tendency to adapt in this way, will feed off that constant negative reinforcement that happens, and that constant negativity as a way of ensuring they don't do anything wrong or what they perceive to be wrong. There's an increase in the amount of people that are talking about health and our overall health, and of course we want to make sure we're in the right health, but it's not just. These messages are sort of aimed at someone who doesn't think at all. Like, they have to be aimed at someone that doesn't care about other people. They're the ones that they're getting with this message, but everyone else along the way is picking up all of these thoughts. Like, you're the sort of person that even if you're 2 meters apart, someone says stay 2 meters apart to you, and repeats that and repeats that and repeats that, you're going to feel like you're doing something wrong even if you're not. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I've been sent the article saying that type 1 diabetics are at a 3 times increased risk of death than people without diabetes. And that to me was not particularly helpful, because I already obsess about my health constantly, and it's already scary to me, but it was hammered on about on the news, and you're just thinking, well, yeah, it's great for people that aren't looking after themselves, but if you're already taking that step to look after yourself, if you're already taking that step to take care of those around you and yourself, then that's all you need to do. Another thing is we're not seeing our friends, we're not seeing our family. That increase in loneliness and isolation is not only difficult because we are, pack creatures, we are sociable creatures, that's what we're made for. We're made for being in groups, but also isolation is a weird one, because you have a tendency when you are suffering from disordered eating to want to do things in isolation. You want to eat away from people, and eventually you get to a place where that's not so difficult anymore. When you're constantly in isolation, you're only thinking about yourself, you're thinking no one else has to watch me. It's very, very easy to slip back into those habits without realizing. You start to feel better because you are carrying out behaviors that used to make you feel very safe. And that's another big point. No one feels safe at the moment. I mean, I don't think anyone does feel totally safe, but some feel very, very scared. And one of the biggest things that people try and do by repeating these ritual behaviors is to feel safe. That's one of the main aims of an eating disorder, is because life feels scary. And what does life feel now to most people? Scary. And this is a big thing. It's a very, very strange thing when you think about it, because it is all our own interpretation of what makes us safe and what makes us vulnerable. And for a lot of people, carrying out a controlled set of behaviors, making sure they don't go above something, making sure that all these things are carried out with such detail, with such perfection, is a way of keeping you safe. And so when I was saying earlier on, it was about avoiding a negative feeling and increasing a positive feeling. That is essentially what you're doing through these behaviors. And eventually, when the positive feelings are pushed out, because you stop feeling it, you start burning out. You're not driven by positivity anymore. You are driven by avoiding that negative feeling, avoiding feeling everything that you've left behind and that you've tried to cover up by implementing these behaviors in your life. And that constant feeling of fear around you is going to trigger these off. And I think this is one of the biggest things. It's just scary. This is a scary situation. And one of the ways that people know how to deal with fear and how to deal with the unknown is by controlling this one area of their life, this tunnel vision, looking at this one area of their life that they feel like they can control. And that tunnel gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you won't even recognize yourself, because you are so consumed with making sure you are in control of this that you lose control of everything, and you lose your ability to live. It's not control at all. It is a mirage. It's made up. It's made up. It's made up by this constant voice that is telling you to do things more. And there is something gratifying about punishing yourself. Eventually you end up getting pleasure out of punishing yourself and out of just complete negativity, and that is where this all feeds into one another. And no wonder it's chaotic at the moment, and it's almost impossible to deal with this completely perfectly. There isn't a way of dealing with completely perfectly, and that's okay. One of the best things that you can do is accept that. For one thing, you want help. You want to make sure that you're getting in touch with the right people. You want to make sure that someone can, you've got someone there that can help you, because it's very, very difficult to deal with these things alone, and it's okay to ask for help. It's so okay to ask for help, and you need it this time. It's a bit like, this is a terrible example, but I can't think of explaining it any other way at the moment, but it's a bit like if you're trying to get fit. We'll say that, get fit. And so having a therapist and having help, or having someone to talk to close to you, whoever it is, it doesn't have to be anything specific, as long as they're okay with it. It's like having a gym and a trainer there, but for your mind, for your soul. And instead of being left in a dark room alone, just told to work out, told, oh, you just got to make yourself stronger in this way, and you don't even know what they're talking about. That is it. You have someone there to ask questions to help you as you're asking questions to yourself. But you still need to be the one that makes the progress. All they are there is there to support you. You are the one that is guiding everything. You are the one that's saying, no, this is too much, or no, this is too little. And you're asking questions, and you're saying, look, I thought about this. And eventually you're coming up with your own routines, and you're asking for support in that. And that is what needs to be done. And I really think it's a good idea to really figure out what's going on with you, because the basis of a lot of these things are the same, but the details around it are different. And so when you start feeling those feelings of anxiety, that lack of control, try and see what it's linked to. And if you've done any work on yourself beforehand, then you'll probably know the origins of these behaviors and why they've come about. And so really try and think, okay, what is it about the situation that is triggering this off in me? Rather than just thinking of the behavior, think a little bit beyond that. And being able to discuss those with someone is so valuable. And also, if something in your routine has become a compulsive behavior, see if you can change it. See if you can break it up and change up your routine, because it's so important. I think it's one of the biggest things that you can do is, before something becomes a compulsive behavior, before something becomes a habit, is to try and change it up as much as you can. And you will need help with this, particularly if you're in a particularly bad place. Try and see the beauty that's in food. Try and eat stuff that makes you happy. Try and realize that your body is doing so much for you to keep you alive and to keep you strong in this state, and everyone is in it together. The more I started to see the beauty in food, and the more I sort of saw how, wow, this has got all these different flavonoids, I started to work out how powerful food was. It changed my perspective on it. And it's very difficult for me to fully slip back now. My recovery was a weird one. It sort of happened in 2 phases, and it's not a typical recovery. Not that anyone has a typical recovery, but one thing that, and if you've got this far in a video, please watch this bit, because it's so important, particularly if you are suffering, is really remind yourself of why you've done something. Now, I lived in Madrid for a few months when I was 18, and I was still struggling a lot with my physical and mental health at that point. And I remember I just wasn't able to do things normally. Anything out of your normal routine, anything that's out of your control, is very, very difficult to cope with. You can cope with set amounts of time, but again, they're within your control. Your out of control areas are within your control. And that stayed when I started my first round of university. That just inability to just adapt ruled my life. It ruled my friendships, everything. A couple of years ago, I ended up really seeing a change when I went on holiday to Italy. I went traveling by myself, and it was the first time that I'd actually felt freedom in what I ate. And I remember walking up a mountain, and I was with a person I just met, and I just thought, this a few years ago, I couldn't have done this. And it was just this unbelievable wave of happiness, of just calm, and that safety I'd been looking for. I felt like I felt it for the first time on the top of that mountain, where my health was in control, and I wasn't feeling this need to just micromanage every aspect of my life. I was having an amazing chat, and this guy was talking to me. I met him on the mountain, and he must have just thought, what the hell's wrong with her? But I just was so overwhelmed with gratitude. And whenever I worry about slipping back, I just think of that time, and I think of how grateful I was. And later on that year, I went to Madrid, and the same thing happened to me. I drunk, so I was slightly hungover, and I ended up going for a late brunch that turned into afternoon champagne. And I also remember thinking, this is so out of my routine, this is so out of my comfort zone, and yet I'm with people that really care about me. I looked around, and there was so much love, and I was with all my friends, and I'm just like, that I wouldn't replace for anything. I would not give that feeling up for anything at all. It's not worth it. And so now every time I think of slipping back into it, I think of everything I couldn't do. I think of the fact that I didn't laugh for 6 months of my life. I think of the fact that I lost a lot of my friends. I think of the fact that I lost myself, and how I don't want to go back to that place again. That place was a hell of a lot scarier than the situation now. But saying that, look after yourself, remember how far you've come, and give yourself a break, whatever it is you're suffering from. It's natural to feel stressed. It's natural to feel out of control. It's natural to want to self-medicate in this way, but you can do it. You can come through this, and we're all going to get through it. Like, cut yourself some slack, talk to the people you need to, and really try and figure out what is behind this shift. When you talk to yourself like you would do a friend, like I'm doing in this video, you know, you want to have the conversations that you would have with a friend. And yeah, treat yourself like a friend, because that's exactly what you need at the moment. You need a friend. You need to be your own friend. Anyway, thanks guys.